Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 strange things that are made out of people.
Number 10. The Sedlec Ossuary. As far as well-praised churches go, the Sedlec Ossuary in the Czech Republic looks like nothing special from the outside. Taking the appearance of an average old medieval Gothic church, it's hard to think why anyone would want to visit it. It's when you enter the church, however, that you see why it managed to get a name for itself. The Sedlec Ossuary contains many artistic features, all made out of human bone. This was due to the fact that in 1278, King Ottokar II sent Henry the Abbot of Sedlec off to Jerusalem on a diplomatic mission. Before he returned, Henry managed to bring back some soil from the Holy Land and blessed Sedlec Ossuary with it. This caused the church to be a very hot and trendy place to be buried in, with lots of rich people approaching Sedlec to have their bodies stored in the Holy Church. The abbot's blessing caused a total of 30,000 people to approach the church with their burial request, including plague victims and casualties of the Hussite Wars. The count got so high they had to make a separate crypt to store the corpses. There were so many bones lying about, it was decided that something had to be done. František Rindt was employed for his woodcrafting skills to make something better out of the piles of bones the church had within it. Who knows what the commissioner had in mind for Rindt to make, but Rindt had his own ideas, making crafts from chandeliers to coats of arms from human bones. Number 9. Jewellery. There are plenty of reasons to brush your teeth. If you're careless about the general health of your body, you'll probably care more for the financial troubles of having your teeth fixed. If you want a little more encouragement, however, perhaps consider your teeth being sold as jewellery someday. Artist Polly van der Glass, like most jewelers, enjoys making rings. Unlike most jewelers, she decides to skip the diamond or opal at the top, choosing instead to put a dentist's dream as the jewel of the piece. As for why she made this decision, the official Van der Glass website states this as her motive. When attached to the body, we praise hair and teeth that adhere to the rules. They are key sites where body beauty is defined, yet when they are shed, their meaning and value undergoes a dramatic transformation. Van der Glass explores this transformation in meaning and uses it to destabilize ideas about beauty. Just make sure you don't sleep with a ring under your pillow, or the tooth fairy might just die of a heart attack. Number 8. A lyre. If you have a problem of getting music out of your head, this is probably not the best way to go. Kept within the Metropolitan Museum of Art is one of the most grisly ways to make a musical instrument. Dating back to the 19th century, it was believed that the lyre was made out of a human skull that came out of South America, but was eventually relocated to potentially coming from Central Africa. Nothing in history books dictates how the lyre came to be. No tribes or traditions held the idea of making a lyre out of a skull, but given the antelope horns attached, it's more likely that it was a craft tradesman trying to cash in on the then limited knowledge of the world by saying it was from some ferocious monster. Number 7. The apex predator. Sometimes the most frustrating part of socializing is getting dressed for the occasion. Do you go with the expensive suit, or is that too much? Maybe something more casual. Surely all of your problems would be solved if you knew you had a suit made out of human hair in your wardrobe. The Apex Predator suit by Van Tiechen Young is a black suit made entirely out of human hair. If that wasn't enough for you to rush out and buy one, the shoes that come with it have their soles lined with dentures, and the suit itself sports eyeballs on the front for decoration. Don't worry, the eyes are made out of glass. So why did they do it? Well, Young himself explained his rationality. The concept of all our work is mixing Darwin's ideas and theories of evolution and putting them into a sort of supernatural context, which is a contradiction, but contradictions create tensions and tensions create ideas. It's really like nature and supernature put together. Still no mention of how you're supposed to get the suit dry cleaned though, maybe with shampoo? Number 6. Household items. Getting all the utensils you need to live in a new home can be a huge hassle. You need to get the pan, some cutlery, some furniture, toiletries. It can take one mammoth shopping trip to get them all. Why go through all of that though when you can use something a lot closer to home? This is the thought process that went through the minds of a pre-Aztec civilization residing in the ancient city of Teotihuacan. When someone died, the citizens quickly descended using stones as knives to part the flesh from the much desired bone. It was essential to get the bone as quickly as possible before the bones became too brittle and would be unusable for bone crafting. Once obtained, the bones would be carved into all kinds of household items, such as spatulas and buttons. There seemed to be some rule and regulations that were laid down before the tribes began to strip the skin off all the dead corpses in the area. Archaeologists digging in the area never once found a bone craft that was crafted from a foreign skeleton. They were all from the tribe that lived there. They also did not use the bones of children, presumably because they would be too weak to work with. Next time you're looking to replace some cutlery, try not to eye up your grandma. Number 5. Xipe Totec Priest Ritual Clothing. If you ever find yourself being asked to help perform a ritual for Xipe Totec priests, perhaps leave your Sunday best at home, and leave whoever asked you while you're at it. Xipe Totec is the name of a god worshipped in Aztec times. He seemed like a decent enough fellow. He cured sickness, took care of the season of spring, supported the people in times of war, and helped young males transfer through into adulthood. When you realize the period of March dedicated to him was called the Aztec word for the act of flaying men, you can see why the people who worshipped this god made the list. Preparing the suits for the priests wasn't a pretty tale. Xipe Totec favored gladiatorial sacrifice probably because he was a supporter of fighting people to solve problems. Captives of war had one of their feet tied to a stone and were given a saber to defend themselves with, except whoever was in charge of outfitting them would make the unfortunate mistake of making the sword out of feathers rather than normal obsidian. However, this same mistake would have not been made for the gladiators, who were armed with proper swords. Those who fell while trying to fight with this weaponized version of a pillow had their skins flayed and then worn by the priests to symbolize corn bursting from a dead husk. The garment would be shown off for 20 days while the priests danced around the city for a good harvest. Number 4. The Kangling. For a little more respectable means of recycling humans into useful tools, let's take a look at the Kangling. The name comes from the Tibetan word for Kang and Ling, which means leg and flute respectively. It's made using a human thigh bone, and unlike some of the entries on this list, it was made by a group of people who did not usually create wares out of human bone. Because of this, when something was made out of human bone, it was not done so without care or respect. Due to this, a Kangling made from a human bone was a sacred instrument. Not just anyone can offer up their bones posthumously to be made into a Kangling. Someone free from worldly stains makes an ideal vessel, and those who died from diseases or simple accidents need not apply. Taking the bone from the right leg meant that the end was infused by male energy, regardless of the gender of the specimen. The left leg was for feminine energies. You wouldn't play it as if you were trying for band practice either. Because of its reverence, the only time you'd see a Kangling played is during a chod ritual. It serves both as a reminder of mortality, and it produces a tone that startles us into wakefulness. So no bragging, you can play Let It Go on one. Number 3. A model of Tiananmen Square. Going into the business of modeling can be a daunting task. First of all, you have to work out exactly what you're going to model, then what material you should use to make it out of. Something cheap yet easy to create objects with, or perhaps something expensive and luxurious. One man decided to use the stuff that was lying around his feet, quite literally. If you've ever had your hair cut by a Beijing hairdresser by the name of Huan Xing, you probably expect that he swept your clippings away to wherever hairdressers get rid of the stuff. However, it turns out he had bigger plans. After collecting hair for months and spending just over $71 on hair dye, Huan Xing made a replica of the buildings around Tiananmen Square. With the Gate of Heavenly Peace finished, Huan Xing got to completing the rest of the features before the 60th anniversary of Communist China's founding back in 2009. As much as he gained some disdain about his art from his customers, he hoped that he could expand the business of hair modeling. I am planning to do portraits of customers using their own hair. From a haircut, I would get both short and long hair, so technically I would be able to make flat works that would, for example, resemble photographs. Next time you have a haircut, see how much extra it costs to have your clippings made into a furry silhouette. Number 2. Head casts. Having the blood rush to your head is an uncomfortable feeling, but one artist made an entire piece of art about it. Artist Mark Quinn once decided what the world needed was a bust of his own face as an art piece. People would usually make self-busts out of stone or marble, but Mark decided to put himself into his own work. Over the space of 5 months, Mark collected the material he needed for his busts, his own blood. Once 4 to 5 liters of the red stuff had been collected, the blood was then molded around the artist's face and then frozen. The result was a grisly creation that hopefully doesn't melt. If you find this interesting and not skin-crawly in the slightest, well, don't worry. The artist made several other busts of himself to show the aging occurring to him. Because apparently the world needs more pieces of art that look like Freddy Krueger went to art school. Number 1. De Destinees de l'homme. People are often in two minds as to whether they should get a hardback or softback version of a book. It's a guarantee, however, that the kind of binding used for this book is something you won't see as an option on Amazon. The book, whose name translates to Destinees of the Soul, is a book about spirituality and the human soul. The words within are only accessible if you dare to touch the covering the book has, as the book was confirmed in 2014 to be bound in human skin. The practice is by no means isolated. In fact, it even has a fancy scientific name, anthropodermic bibliopagy, which is the scientific term for books you wouldn't want on your shelf anytime soon. It was a common practice between the 16th and 19th century where people had an interest, and that word is used very loosely in making books out of one another. And no, we don't mean biographies.
So I really hope you found that video suitably disturbing. That's what we were going for. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this. Well, slightly less disturbing than this, but every day of the week. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.